Hey, good morning, good evening. It is, believe it or not, Wednesday, November 20th, 2024. The year is racing along here, and this is Aragon Live with Ken Delaney, Adam Pease, Betsy Burton, yours truly, Jim Lundy. A lot of news today coming out from different places. We're going to start with Microsoft Ignite that's going on right now. And I watched part of the keynote yesterday. So I think one of the bigger stories is Copilot agents, which are not new, but Copilot agents with repetitive task automation. So you can get it to send reminders for you. You can get it to follow up on requests. So I think that, when you look at the old thing that we said was tactical of robotic process automation, you're now seeing agents that can basically automate repetitive tasks. So again, software is generally good at repetitive things. AI agents can now do repetitive tasks. There are a number of providers that do that. And as Adam and the team knows, we're publishing I believe our fourth annual report on agent platforms actually tomorrow. And our friends in Microsoft and others did well in that report. But other people have been doing task automation, like one of the firms is called Cognigy. So we cover agents, agent platforms, but the idea of these mini agents that are really low code. And I know, Adam, you have a cool note coming out on low code. So that's one of the things we want to talk about. So that's one of the things they announced. Many, many other things, including a security hackathon. But the big thing that's hyping out there more on the consumer side is the 365 Link, which looks like the Mac Mini. So they're calling it a mini PC. It's a little box with an Ethernet port, and you can stream Windows over the wire with a subscription. So it's not a GPU computer like the Mac Mini. But when you saw it, you thought, oh, that looks just like a Mac Mini, but it's really a terminal. It's like a Chrome device. So it's not an AI PC. It's basically, somebody said that they kind of stole Apple's homework, but they didn't really copy it down right. So I don't know, any comments from the team on these news?
Jim, I want to ask you about these agents because, I've been using Windows since it came out. And then early on, there was ability for you to kind of do a task in Windows, have it record that, and actually play it back. So, if you're doing something repetitive in a spreadsheet or whatever, instead of doing it manually over and over again, you could record it and have it do it for you. Will these agents have a recording capability that which I find very useful if it does?
Yeah, I mean, look, so I've built an agent system myself using Google Vertex. It was very easy. So I do think that this idea of low-code task automation inside of an agent is going to be a thing. And so we kind of call them mini agents. So the idea is you license Copilot, you get Copilot Studio, and with Copilot Studio, you can build an agent. Like what we're calling at Aragon, a mini agent, because it's not a full-blown application. It basically does small things repetitively. For example, if I send out this email in 10 days, send a reminder that they didn't reply. Mm-hmm. Okay. So Adam we could use that for some of our notifications.
So it's initiated more by describing what you want as opposed to actually doing it and having it repeated.
You have to be very specific of what you want it to do.
Okay, got it. Makes sense. Okay, so me about Chrome OS migrating to Android. Well, Google's been actually putting a number of Chrome applications on Android, and you can see the trend. You can see the trend very easily that Android is becoming more and more of its platform. And so I think they're really making this shift and putting it on Android. And they're going to be Android PCs, much like maybe mini PCs. What's interesting about this is that, we've seen Windows move on Qualcomm chips, right? And now we got Android, which natively works on Qualcomm and other ARM type chips. So that platform is becoming much more of an anchor point for the alternatives to Apple, type environments. So this is pretty interesting. It's also interesting because the DOJ has said that they'd like to see Google offload Chrome OS as an independent company. Today there was talk about that being maybe $20 billion acquisition or purchase price for that. It'd be tough for Google to lose this, but maybe this migration to Android is a bit of a defensive move, so they wouldn't be hurt as much by having to divest of Chrome OS. So a lot more to hear about here. Anyways, back over to you, Jim.
Yeah. So another thing, so there's next generation AirTags. So AirTags, these devices allow you to track things. I mean, that's been out there, and some of them used for nefarious purposes. But the new AirTag is out. I don't know if any of you have used an AirTag, but I actually got one in a care package from a vendor. And people use them to keep track of all kinds of things. Anyway, it's basically called AirTag 2, and it kind of, I mean, it's still not officially out, but it does have a replaceable battery, but it's not a rechargeable battery. So there's
probably a lot more security in it too.
There's more security. There's a better wideband chip. They've got some other things but and
will it integrate with Apple Intelligence as well?
I'm not sure about that. But it's not shipping yet. So it's in the works, and we'll keep monitoring that. But one thing I would say to you is you do need to be aware of your settings on iOS devices and Chrome devices about tagged devices that might be following you. And there's ways to set up your machine to do that. So like this device is following you, particularly with iOS 18.1. So it's much better notifying you like, hey, these AirPods were with you. I lost a pair of AirPods, by the way, on my trip.
Oh, no.
I didn't have iOS 18, so it did kind of cryptically say, it looks like you forgot these, where the new one says, hey, these are with you or they're not with you.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And by the way, there's some incredible automations in iOS 18, by the way. You can basically say a command, you can program a command. Speaking of mini agents, you can program a command that says, take a picture of the screen. So instead of having to press the screenshot to take a screenshot, you just say, take a screenshot. So that's like a mini agent.
Yeah.
Well, we've been talking for a long time about, that kind of ad hoc interface being much more of the future interface for applications than the tree structure that we have today. Sure. Did you want to comment on Gemini integration with Apple Intelligence or?
Yeah, so that's coming. I mean, they have a partnership, and I would just say that they've been talking about it, and they announced it early in the year.
But Apple Intelligence is not founded on Gemini, right? It's founded on
Apple has I've written about this. Apple has their own LLMs that run on device. They will right now integrate with ChatGPT in the cloud, but they're also going to integrate with Gemini. So iOS 18.2 is supposed to have the beginning of the ChatGPT integration, and that's 18.2, I think, is just coming out. But no one's confirmed that the ChatGPT is fully integrated yet. And so the way it will work is you can basically ask questions on your device, and that will be local Apple LLM running on your device. If you want a bigger answer and a bigger LLM, then it says, do you want to integrate with ChatGPT in the cloud?
Oh, so basically you can pick the data set upon which Apple Intelligence works.
Yeah, primarily to be your device and your information.
Okay.
Now, by the way,
And this is only on the iPhone, right?
No. I actually upgraded one of my Macs, and I told the apps which ones I wanted to be able to do summaries from. All your apps on your machine, it can do summaries.
Okay.
All
All
the
right.
apps.
Because
Yeah,
it looked
I
like
thought it
for a
was-
minute there, this was only for the iPhone.
iPhone, iPad. Now you have to have Apple Silica, and I think you have to request it for older Macs.
Okay.
By the way, Adam, I'm going to talk to you about getting you a new Mac.
Okay, cool.
So this is pretty interesting. I mean, I had mistakenly thought that Apple Intelligence was totally self-contained. What you're telling me is that basically you can pick from the several data sets based and customize it to what you like. That's pretty smart. Anyways, okay, NVIDIA's Blackwell chip is shipping, and there's been reports of overheating on these chips. Not consistent. They're going to be talking about that at their announcement shortly. But they've gone back to the customers and said, really, it's kind of a layout problem. You got to lay these chips out differently. Who knows whether that was the original recommendation or whether they're just trying to get past this issue. We'll see if it's affected earnings shortly, but it's not all smooth for the Blackwell rollout here. So enough said with that. Jim, back over to you.
Yeah. So Red Hat, which is wholly owned by IBM, is acquiring Neural Magic, which is basically going to be kind of more infrastructure on Gen AI and infrastructure optimization. So, and commitment to open source, which is what Red Hat is. But I would say to you that what's happening is everybody's lining up basically tools to help optimize AI. And I think the Neural Magic is a great pickup for Red Hat. But what you're seeing is the shift to AI data centers, AI PCs. It's all happening, and so there's going to be a massive consolidation, we think, of a lot of startups that basically can never make it on their own. And so the bigger providers need to instrument their platforms to be able to be more AI friendly. So there's going to be a lot of acquisitions that like this. Okay, so we wanted to talk about Palantir, and I'll start it off. They have been in the news a lot because I think they've got a marketing team now. When we covered them years ago, when Betsy's niece worked there, it was all secretive, and you had to basically study them and find out where their deals were and talk to customers, and that's how we found out about them. Customers talked to us, but now they're public. They had a 30% year-over-year revenue growth. A lot of that defense, but they're pushing their Foundry product in commercial. So, team, let's talk about that. What's your take on Palantir?
And they're expanding internationally too. They've got offices all over the place. So,
yeah, when it comes down to it, Palantir still has some really strong, really integrated analytic applications, and now they're expanding certainly those capabilities with AI. So I think it's in a strong position. As you said, Jim, 60% of the revenue still coming from the commercial sector the government sector versus the commercial. They're trying to grow that commercial business a lot. I think they're just positioned in a place that's going to be interesting to a lot of organizations for their AI analytic capabilities. So I think they're sort of in a good position given the growth of AI.
I think they're going to start to hurt IBM. Because I think IBM has at least tried to position themselves as the consulting company of choice to actually implement AI in a lot of enterprise. And I think Palantir is starting to, get into those areas and probably will grow. So it'll be interesting to see how that mix of business shifts between the two of them.
I wrote a blog last week about their partnerships that they did with Anthropic, and so they are building partnerships with a lot of organizations, and it's not surprising to me that they're expanding, their partnership and also internationally. Their growth has been really really strong recently. I wonder, when that's going to start to be a challenge for them. We see organizations go through that trough of disillusionment. They're going from a very, very tightly controlled, very tight organization to high growth. Don't know if they're going to run into some growth issues there.
Betsy, that's a really good point. Whenever you're a body shop, you need lots of bodies. That taps out your growth at some point.
And they were really extremely closely managed. I mean, when I was looking at them a couple of years ago, I mean, they were extremely closely managed. The resources across the company. So cool. Anything else?
Well, what's the next
I've
one?
got my next one is Meta strikes a content deal with Reuters. So Meta has struck a deal with Reuters for some of their content, and their goal is to be able to offer the Reuters content up to Meta's users. it's a little bit of a vague announcement that's gone out there. There's no financials. It's expected that there was some sort of financial arrangement on that, although there's no news on the financial arrangement at all. So it's not known any of the details of that at all. It does mean that, you know, Meta is going to be able to have access to the news from Reuters. It's beneficial for Meta users in that regard, you know, but it's another channel for Reuters. We'll see what happens with this one. Did you have a thought on that, Ken?
Yeah, well, I think what's interesting about this is that, you know, we've seen a lot of paywalls emerge to protect the content, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, whatever. And, you know, there's a lot of work to put that content together. And of course, you know, all the content they have historically. So I think, you know, this will start to, you know, generate revenue for these content assemblers, so to speak, and that have valuable data upon which AI cannot succeed without that data. So, you know, this is a good deal, I think, to keep the content assemblers alive, so to speak.
Yep. The next one that we have is a question about Blue Sky. Blue Sky is another interactive, you know, platform like X and Threads and the rest of it. And we've seen a real,
From the founder of
yeah.
From the
Excuse me. Yeah. Although it's interesting, Ken, Jack Dorsey was involved in Blue Sky early on, but is no longer involved and in fact has deleted his account from Blue Sky. So I don't think that there's much of a connection there anymore. But you know, Blue Sky's number of users has increased from 9 million to 20 million in the last month. It's suspected that there's a lot of people who've moved over to Blue Sky who were involved in, who were interested in it as an alternative to Twitter. In fact, after the election. So that was an interesting jump that happened. You know, I think that we're going to see a number of these applications appear, and whether or not they make it in the long term or not, whether people are just out there checking it out for a little while, is sort of a to be seen. The question that you brought up, Ken, which is an interesting one, is, you know, are there going to be technologies that emerge to enable people to, you know, whatever, tweet out or whatever, have their message go out and then have it go to different channels depending upon what their choices are. So what are your guys' thoughts?
Adam, you had a great thought on the Threads.
Yeah, well, I was just pointing out that, you know, earlier this year we saw Meta release this Threads app, which was kind of meant to be a competitor with X when a lot of people were, you know, dissatisfied and leaving the platform in a wave kind of earlier this year. And they had a huge launch. You know, they were tons of users, but I think if you looked at a graph of their users, it would just be like dropping off a cliff basically after that first few weeks. And I think what happened was there was a lot of hype around the application on the news and on other social media. People tried it out, but I think the reason people typically are coming to platforms, you know, like, well, the reason they're coming to X and Twitter in the first place before it was X, I think was because there was this kind of infrastructure role that Twitter played, where it was the place you would go for the most up-to-date news and the you know, the comments and takes from the people who you know, were going to be the people you most wanted to hear talk about the news. And so I think that it's a little hard to displace that kind of first mover advantage when a lot of people are just used to going to the platform for that. So I think what happened with Threads is people tried it out, you know, they realized that it wasn't the place where it may have been a place where good posts were getting made and people would like reading the posts or whatever, and people liked interacting with their friends, but it wasn't a place where you would get like this pulse news feed of the current moment in a way that I think that Twitter has kind of imperfectly acted that way for people. I think there are lots of problems with it, but I think that Twitter does sort of do its best to fulfill that role even now. And so I have suspicion that we might see a lot of these users drop off unless Blue Sky can kind of replicate that effect, which I'm not saying it can't. It's possible.
Yeah, I think the thing I would say is, you know, Facebook still kind of dominates. You got TikTok, you got Instagram, you got YouTube Shorts, which is not really social sharing, but it is kind of. So I do think, you know, you look at the video social media platforms, they're trending. I think copycats, I mean, you know, first of all, Twitter, X never really got the following. They never really got up there. I mean, you know, 200 to 400 million users, that's not enough. Instagram threads, to your point, Adam, not enough. But when you look at TikTok, when you look at YouTube Shorts, when you look at these video sharing, and Instagram, by the way, Instagram absolutely crushing it. But you know, a lot of people are paid promoters to promote stuff on there. So I do think that that's one of the things is that, you know, X and others have tried to make it more of a social, you know, video sharing. You could share a lot of videos on that, but you know, I stopped worrying about Twitter, you know, years ago. But by the way, I was harassed on Twitter many, many times, and I complained and no one ever did anything to help me. And a lot of other people were harassed too. So I think that, you know, I think the big thing is some of these big social media platforms are not regulated and they allow harassment. And so that's the question is, are they really a communications platform that should be regulated? And we've talked about that for the whole time we've had Aragon. We talked about that. Then we just stopped talking about it because it wasn't worth talking about because no one cared.
Yeah. I think that's a key issue, Jim. Is it a communications platform or is it a content/news platform? And those are really two different approaches towards it.
Well, you know, so, you know, Meta pivoted and say, oh, we're an ad platform, but they're also a social media platform. So,
right.
So the way they make money is through ads, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it like the telephone or is it like the newspaper?
Well, see, for a while, Twitter was getting you doing emergency communication, stuff like that, but I think that's fallen off. I don't think that, I don't think that at all. There's just not enough people on it.
Yeah.
But I would say that, you know, tools like WhatsApp, which is free, police and fire use that. But, you know, I still think that Facebook is a worldwide audience and they are steering public opinion, you know, through different means, but they also steal data to sell ads. You know? So I think when you look at it, everybody wants to get access to your data so they can sell you stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, so like I said, we'll keep tracking Blue Sky. But like I said, I think Adam, your analysis was very good, very similar to Threads. Which, by the way, I post on Instagram and then it posts on Threads. I don't ask it to post on Threads. So I've seen some, you know, former colleagues on Threads. Like I saw Tom Austin on there, and I never see him anywhere else.
But it's interesting. We're going to see people jump from different platforms over time, and
oh yeah,
jump back and forth. So it's you know, it's just, I mean, people are going to change their opinions.
I think also the world's woken up, so maybe it's like it's different, you know. It's not like all three of my brothers, one's never been on it, but they're not all three of my brothers are not on Facebook.
Oh, that's interesting.
One's never been. The other two left like 7 years ago.
Yeah. Well, and of course all the kids got off Facebook once their parents got on it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So look, November 20th, we may do a call next week, which would be the day before Thanksgiving because we actually are working that day. So this has been Aragon Live on November 20th, 2024 team. Thank you for the great analysis. We'll keep monitoring. I'm going to be doing a blog on Ignite. So you'll hear more about Copilot agents and this little 365 link. Thank you very much, team.
Yep.
Thank you.